we are creating an energy field for storytelling. This is a co-creative space to support the collective and ourselves with our own consciousness growth, with the themes that are relevant right now, coming up in our own lives and in relationship to the relationships in our lives. I allow only the highest benevolent support to be in this field. All other beings, entities, earthbound spirits, and frequencies must leave. Closing any open doors, portals, back doors, hidden and secret doors. This is sacred space. I'm asking that the stories, the words, and the wisdom that come through in this podcast episode may benefit the highest good of all who listen in this space. And I want to welcome you, our guest, Dr. Andrew Pollak. It's just such an honor to speak with you today on this podcast because we've been already discussing some really hot topics that want to come through. And so let's just take a moment to land in the space because it's already shifting. You can feel that. Dr. Andrew is a brilliant metaphysician, relational metaphysician, especially in the world of Chinese medicine, as a doctor of Oriental medicine and a practitioner of sound healing Acutonics.
And of course, we share that nomad kind of wanderlust sense of adventure and calling to go to different places at different times and do different work with different people in different spaces, which has also been Japan for you and me at different times, and
hopefully eventually Japan, you and me at the
yes,
same time.
at the same time. That would be amazing. That'd be amazing. Yeah.
That's been in the field for a long time. The word timing really stood out to me, and the idea of really exploring the timing of what's happening right now relationally with people. And I mean, I can speak from my own experience and from what I'm witnessing in my circles around me. But we were kind of discussing a little bit earlier on when we were opening up the field about the resonance between people coming together for an evolutionary purpose. And it's like when someone's working through something personally and then they meet someone who has that similar imprint or energetic template in a way. Maybe not template, that's not the right word. They have a certain frequency band that's similar. And so they're going through their thing, you're going through your own thing. And then when you come together, there's a possibility for an evolution. And maybe that looks like a trigger and a letting go. And like for me personally, this week, particularly this last week, today's October 3rd, so to put this in time, I've been noticing a lot of purging and detoxing wanting to happen in my own life. And that is through relationships, through physical detox, through detoxing things in my life that are not serving, that are not supporting, including with like work projects and ending, completing things. And I've been in this kind of spaciousness of noticing old versions of myself that I once related with people who have carried certain types of trauma. And those people are actually exiting my life right now. And I take it as a really positive sign that it's just not a vibrational match anymore. And so I'm almost kind of celebrating that in a way, but I want to kind of put that out to the audience listening. Has anything like that been happening to you, or have you been noticing things drop away or leave or complete out of a space of divine timing, out of a space of evolving? Yeah, that's been coming through as a big topic. It's interesting. I hear the words, but what is it really about? So I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Oh, so the metaphor I have is kind of like a theater company having casts, having like, maybe a kind of a rotating cast system and, cast without an E at the end, of course, just
Hmm.
casting. And that there might be certain core players, let's say certain core players that are, in every play, even in every city when they go from town to town. But that other players maybe rotate as they go from city to city and they're not, at every show. And that what we may be going through or have just gone through is a kind of shuffling or reordering in that cast. And some of those players exit as some new ones come in. And as that happens, there's a reminder as to who is one of the main characters in your life, which I say that word that is often used in the singular in a slang sense, when someone's giving main character energy. But I think in the plural, it can be a little more spiritualized as who are the main characters in your life that you keep reconnecting with and keep coming back to it as you both respectively go through your upgrades and updates.
Hmm.
So I think,
It's kind of like us, really.
yeah, my
We've
gosh.
kind of gone in and out of being in touch and then having distance and reconnecting at just the right time. So I definitely feel that when you're speaking about the cast of characters, I'm thinking of like the soul tribe. Who's in your tribe? And sometimes those are people that you've known throughout your life. And like I've known for myself, like some people in even my childhood and high school have come back into my life recently that I didn't expect, or people when I lived out in Colorado have just woven in and out of my life in just the right timing of things. And even meeting people recently in my new city here in Charlottesville, Virginia, meeting Soul Family. And like I've been asking myself, why am I living here? Like really, why am I living here? And I'm still learning. I think part of that is meeting the soul tribe and then watching people kind of leave. It's like their time and that interaction and that learning is complete, and it's okay to let go. And I kind of want to take a breath for that. Just like, it's a relief though when something leaves your life and it clears up so much space and room for clarity and the right thing to come in. I've been reading this book called Luminous Life by Dr. Lieberman is his last name,
Yeah.
Lieberman. And he talks about how luminous we are as beings, that literally in the same way that plants emanate light and they face the sun, that humans are actually really similar. And it's like we actually receive 98% of the light in our being from our eyes, from getting the light codes from the sun. We're getting
Oh,
the other 2% coming in through the skin, through light exposure, and then also through consuming food that contains light, because the plants soak up the light and then we eat the plants, or the animals eat the plants. So the plants are really important. But this idea that, we also shine and exude light. And when we do that, we also attract the people who shine and exude light in the same way that we do. So it's kind of magnetizing. And I think that's how we find our soul tribe. And there's that heart connection that you can feel when you're a part of this, cast of players of your life.
it's a heart field in the sense that, yeah, there's playfulness, familiarity, there's maybe a sense of feeling understood with maybe minimal extra explanation required, a sense of feeling seen in your highest capacity or your highest truth. And I think when we're with the rotating cast, we're kind of playing in the world of shadows and projections and fantasies and hopes and dreams. And, uh, there's can be a lot of smoke and mirrors there. And
Mhm.
people perceive us then in this uh, kind of through that distorted lens, as do we perceive others through our own filters. And sometimes I think we get really hung up on trying to see someone clearly and get really clear on who they are and where they came from and what, in a very almost meta biographical psychological kind of sense. But I think as I take a step back, I think maybe what's important is just to recognize what they do for us or what they did for us, and honor what we did for them, and not work
Mhm.
too hard and trying to feel seen or heard or understood, and let it be.
Right. Like when I hear you speak, I just think about how relationships evolve us. And it's like if you're staying in that shadow projection realm of relating, then it just brings up more hurt. But it's like when you're able to kind of evolve through that and learn the lesson and actually see that person as a teacher, it's like, how can I relate differently? And what is it really? You know? Like I have my thing, they have their thing. Most of the time they're not even related. We're just projecting. It's just it's a realm of being on earth is a realm of interrelating with each other and learning about ourselves through the mirror of other relationships. So I like to think of it like, okay, if that person's actually a teacher, not somebody who's out to hurt me or bring up my own unresolved wound, because we all have them, those childhood wounds of not feeling heard, seen, belonging, ignored, whatever it was. However, they repeat into adulthood. It's like when you're actually ready to evolve out of that state of being, then looking at that person as a teacher and just honoring the separation and the letting go, and then knowing that you're actually attracting in new relationships and a new way of relating to people, right? And it's like it takes for me it takes like faith, it takes trust knowing that that's the case. Having lost a lot of people in my life for various reasons, then having trust that like I'm you know going to meet just the right people at the right time. And there's so much evidence of that, it's like ridiculous. Like I just completed a 4-week workshop that I was co-hosting with my colleague Mary Jo Rathgeb, and we were going over our own hero's journeys through the planetary cycles. And I was going over my Saturn return cycle between the ages of 28 to 35. And I'm just moving into being 35. And so I'm ending this cycle now. And it was just interesting looking at all of the hurt that came up throughout the cycle and all of the major transitions and what it took as far as having strength to move through and what it took for my own personal growth to move through everything. But then I realized after looking back at my story that just the right people came in at just the right time. Like the information was always there, the support was there, and even if I was in it when I was in it, like when I look back, it was like, wow, I had the teachers, the mentors, I had the people coming in to just sit next to me while I was crying or to be there to hear what I was going through. And like sometimes they were literal strangers. Like I would meet somebody in a coffee shop and just connect and have this like soulful, like full body healing type of experience just from having this dialogue with like a wise old soul. And it's just amazing how we find each other like that, that we just like attract light meets light. And it's like if you're hurting or if you're going through something in a relationship, then you find somebody or they find you who has like the antidote, who knows exactly what to say, when to say it. And I literally witnessed that today in a coffee shop. I met a woman who was like a conduit, and I could just see the energy flowing in through her occipital energy center and just bringing through exactly what I needed to hear. It's just quite amazing how this whole sea of fish, as I'm looking at your scenic background of the ocean, how we really just dance and interrelate in this realm of energy and evolution all the time.
As a school, kind of a school of souls.
And it's like you can be in your own space as a fish or as a turtle or as a dolphin or whatever kind of creature you are. But then sometimes you can allow yourself to become the water and see the fuller perspective.
The plasma, the substrate, the web rather than the spider.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool perspective. Let me put that in my cheek to just pre-chew on for a moment as I externalize a response I had to what you were sharing, which is related and or maybe the other side of what you're sharing regarding faith and having the faith that the right people will come in at the right time when you need them. And I think another part of that faith is trusting that others will leave at the right time and leave once you've come to a completion, some kind of completion with that dynamic or that relationship, which um, is also something that can feel like a relief. It can feel like grief. It can kind of feel like both.
Mhm.
And as we've experienced as practitioners, that there's a range of things. Sometimes when we talk about relationship, people are thinking about romantic relationship, but of course, there's also friendship and colleagues and students or clients or patients. And as practitioners, maybe to dip into something a little bit kind of a professional lens, as practitioners, sometimes we outgrow the patient. I think there's multiple perspectives. Either the patient, comes to a completion with the kind of work that they need to do with us, and then that ends or that concludes, or we come to a completion with the patient, and which is to say maybe our modality shifts or our approach or the kind of medicine we're doing changes, which could be, we used to offer really deep tissue massage, and now we're only doing really light energy work. And so people might still want to come in and keep seeing us for what they were receiving, but we're no longer offering that. And and so that can create kind of an ending there, or we're moving into doing almost more collaborative work.
Mm.
And that then shifts away from that kind of top-down model of patient comes in not knowing anything about themselves or their body or what's going on. They want to hear everything from you, and they want you to say everything and speak fully from your expertise and your intuition. And um, it can shift from those kind of clients or patients to ones who either have some kind of working understanding of medicine or a deeply intuitive, kind of somatic relationship with their body, and they can feel and track what's going on and communicate and collaborate with you as that goes along. And I think that can be a big, a big theme again around relationship is what kind of people do you want to work with? Do you want to have those more collaborative, interactive, engaged kind of sessions, or the silent and sacred sessions where you're just working very deeply and earnestly and sincerely, and they're just receiving, um and
Hmm.
I suppose there's a time and place for all levels of interaction and engagement with that. But what you might feel is on a person by person, case by case level. It might feel right with someone for you to be the, source of information and the authority on this, and you're the one just reading them and giving them all this information, and it just feels right. It just flows. And other times it's not. And what the session is calling for is more interaction and almost like more relationship with the person. I think maybe that happens as you work with someone longer and longer over long term. You get to have more and more collaboration and cooperation with them.
Mhm.
If that's the contract, if that's you know, the agreement, and it can feel imbalanced if even if, yeah, sure, even if they're paying you and you're the licensed professional, it can feel imbalanced if you're the one doing all the uh, engaging and interacting and sourcing, and if they keep saying, well, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, what is this? I don't know what this means. I don't know what this feels like. At a certain point, that doesn't work anymore.
Mhm. For sure. Yeah, I can relate to that in my own practice. I used to do a lot more reading for people, and I think it all started with pulse reading back, 10 plus years ago. I would start reading like the traditional Chinese medicine pulse, but I would start getting images and other information and other stories that came out of the meridians. And then it turned into this like intuitive reading where I would see that person in relationship to another person or another environment or their work or whatever it was, and I would see the energy interacting between them, and I would just tell them like this is the metaphor that I'm seeing. And I think as my abilities have been evolving, like certain things dissolve and then certain new perceptions will arise. And where I am right now, it's interesting because I can be very clairaudient and, or actually clairvoyant, I meant to say. And so maybe I'm becoming more clairaudient.
Hmm.
I used to be very clairvoyant in the way I would visualize and actually see beings and entities. And I can still feel them. Like I can feel how it looks. And sometimes, like the being who came in before this podcast, it was like an actual person, a light being standing right there in the room. But that's actually pretty rare for me. But I've learned over time that because it's not about me, it's about them, that like it's better that even if I see or know something about what they're going through, that if I kind of frame it in like the perspective of I'm noticing this type of energy, or I'm noticing your body respond this way, or I'm noticing, just being a witness in that space as they're kind of unraveling themselves. And so I'm just creating this space so that I know that my place is as like a guide to help them unravel it for themselves, and it's within their context, within their dimensional reality, and if they're ready to shift into a different dimensional reality, then that opportunity will arise. For
Yes.
some, for many, that's not why they came. So it's also led by their intention that they're putting in the space. So I'm kind of learning and moving in the flow of like listening as deeply as I can. And so I think it's it's been like an evolution in my own practice from like getting messages, intuitive messages, and kind of sharing what I was seeing about their reality to using that intuitive knowing, but then also discerning how I wanted to relate it to their perceptual awareness. But there's just so many different types of people and ways of working with people too. So it's like it's so hard to like even put that in a one size fits all
Yeah.
relationship field, you know, because everybody's so different. And there's like, you know, you meet people who are like super intuitive and like you don't have to say anything. It's like, oh, what are you feeling here? And they'll be like, that was a trauma from when I was 7 years old. Like I'm sure you've met plenty of people who just know on point, like that's exactly what is happening. They came to release it, you're holding the space, and then bam, it's just happening, right?
Or you get like, oh, this feels like something that happened when you were a freshman in high school, and they're like, that was a wonderful time in my life. I'm really happy to hear that was a wonderful time in your life. And maybe your body felt differently about that. Maybe there was still something that was difficult for your body to work through or that your body held on to, um, underneath your awareness. And so sometimes, yeah, languaging that to people who uh, reject it, that can get tricky. But what's great is when, yeah, you get kind of an image or a just some information and you share it with them. Like it might be like, oh, I'm tasting popcorn in this point. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, well that makes me think about this uh popcorn machine in the garage that's been in the garage. My husband and I have been arguing about that, why that's in the garage, because I almost ran into it 2 times when I tried to park the car in the garage and this, fucking popcorn machine is the bane of my existence." And that all just comes from you tasting popcorn, right? And you might think if you try to give that any more context, you might be like, is this a popcorn allergy? Is this about corn and GMOs? And you're like, no, you just share it and tasting popcorn, and they can sometimes run with it. And you're like, okay,
Right.
that's the story. But
Right, because sometimes it's a metaphor and sometimes it's literal, and
yeah,
the
it's
person, only the
literal.
person knows exactly what it means.
Yes.
Yeah.
And ideally they do. But something that comes to mind is as you were sharing about the bespoke nature of treatments regarding how you shift into different worldviews, different paradigms, different dimensions, person to person or day to day with the same person. Sometimes there's a harmonic interval that comes into play with that dimension. Let's say the dimension that you are in when you're in that treatment, and then the one that they're at, and there might be a harmonic interval between the two. You're like, oh, it's really fun to meet you in this dimension where you're at, or it's not, and it's really gritty and uncomfortable and uh, and all the things. And gritty is actually, it can be really good. It makes me think about the Acutonics system and how they will work with seconds, like the second interval and a minor second interval to nudge someone out of like a sticky resistance to doing some difficult work or some deep work. And sometimes that uncomfortable harmonic will come up when you've reached something really good, really like
Mm-hmm.
meaty, really substantial.
Oh,
Um,
I can definitely relate to that.
yeah. And so we kind of have to let go of, liking it. Sometimes you like how it feels, sometimes you don't. You have to kind of just let go of that and be
Hmm.
the vessel and the practitioner.
I mean, I can think of a great example is like the interval between 528 and 639 hertz. It's like you have the frequency that's connected to the solar plexus or maybe the heart, and then the high heart and communication between the heart
Mm.
and the high heart.
Kind of like heart and pericardium.
Yeah, and a lot of people hold a lot of trauma and, guarding and borders and guards and all sorts of metaphors for protection around the heart. And sometimes when I play these tuning forks with others, with myself, and I'm working through something, it's like the discord of my experience and my frequency with the tuning fork interval sounds awful. And it's almost sometimes can be even, it's just even physically discomforting. And like if I play this right now, it's like, what do you notice inside of your heart space? And I'm not speaking just to you, Andrew, I'm speaking to everyone listening to this. So it's like there's a harmonizing that's happening, right? It's like a truth wants to be revealed, but something has to be neutralized and released in the process.
Hmm. It feels better and better the more you do it.
Right, like the tone gets clearer.
It gets clearer. The first time you did, the experience I had was like someone ringing the doorbell, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to answer it.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great metaphor.
And then I felt like like a merging between the two. Um, like the second time it was like, okay, that's fine. I'll just let them leave it at the door and then I'll go to the door later. And then the third time it was like there was no door. There was like a merging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes me think of like the parts of ourselves that we're merging, or those things that exist that contradict each other within duality. It's like something two things can be both true and they contradict each other, but it's like how do you reconcile that within yourself?
Mm. Mm.
And I think that's what the frequency does. I I believe that's what it does. That's what it like literally, yeah, it harmonizes paradoxes.
Yeah. Paradox resolution.
I think like a really good example of that is like for some reason the phrase that's coming to mind is why do so many good people go through difficult things or experience disease or, when you just know these like community leaders or loving family members who experience different conditions or suffer or have an accident or like whatever it is. And then there's like this contradiction of like, how can that happen? I feel like these tones harmonize that because when we're talking about the harmonic of the spheres and of this kind of macro harmonic, universal harmonic that's informing the drop down of our 3D physical experience, there's a bigger picture to what we're up to here in the physical as humans. Nobody goes through life without suffering, emotionally, physically, whatever. We all die. Yeah. We knew that. But it's like in how it develops and what it looks like within the drama of human experience and relating and relationships in that evolutionary process, there's always the impetus to come back into a harmonic state, into a homeostasis, into a balance, into a oneness with love, with this all that is. And eventually we die and we go back and we start remembering it all. And it's like, oh, now I get to look back at my character, my actor, and see this is what I was learning. I get to review it all, you know? But like from my perspective, I'm viewing these things as a human. It's a little strange, because I'm looking at the big picture and the dramas and the stories. And I think that's one of the skills of like the practitioner when you can kind of see that macro level of the full context, that integrative context of what they're going through. And it includes the physical and the relational and the emotional and the mind and the thought, you know, And that's where like the intuitive relating also comes in when you can kind of see that, you know? So I like the idea of like it being like an investigation, you know, it's like when you're coming up and you have like these images, like for you, you're very intuitive and third eye oriented in a way that I'm not. Like visually, you come up with like metaphors. I've always known you to do that. Like you have this beautiful way of relating with metaphors and then also with learning and just knowing exactly what acupuncture point it's related to. Or it can be like, I don't know how many times I've heard you say something like, oh, it's, you know, whatever relationship or trauma in relationship to this acupuncture point. Or like, I'm feeling this in this point.
Yeah, I feel that chief complaint in lung 8 on the right or something. Yeah.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's like, and that's so cool because that's like your unique intuitive skill set that you bring that like I don't know any other acupuncturist who does that. I don't even want to call you an acupuncturist because like, you know, we're just so much more than that.
It's well it's the media, you know, it's how we it's the tool and the and a map. It's a tool and a map that we use to interface with the body. And but right, as a title, it's almost like yeah, we are perhaps it might be more accurate to say that we practice Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and that is a significant lens through which we interpret the body, but it's not you know, the sum total of who we are, and less a title and more of a skill set or a knowledge base. If I may respond to a couple of things you said there, for one about paradoxes, you know, reconciling paradoxes. I think being able to reconcile paradoxes is like, that's it. That's how you escape the matrix. That's how you get out of the binary, you know, him or her, this or that, my way or the highway, kind of trapped, limiting thinking is reconciling paradoxes. And that's one of the, I think, most important skills to anchor in at this time is to, you know, to have the neutrality and the groundedness to be able to reconcile the paradox without getting kind of flung out of your body through emotional reactivity. And good luck, babe, because it's not always easy, but it's what we signed up for. And to also jump to another moon of this metaphysical planet that we have just, you know, orbited around. I think that we're now in the life review process whilst in physical form. That you were speaking about the things that we realize at the end of life after we've passed on and when we're in that kind of life review phase of, oh, this is what my character did and this is what happened and what that meant. I think we actually have the opportunity and are living through a conscious life review now, right now.
Mm-hmm.
And um, which is part of why it's so important to organize your relationships and your time around having space to go into deep contemplation around life review and your relationships and what are the threads and the themes of all the relationships you've had as an adult, professional and friendship and romantic, and what are the themes, what were the lessons, and what are the hitches and the hooks, and because we're in that. I think that I don't know, I think that's kind of a for one, it's a unique feature of the times and this dimensional space that we're in right now, this kind of in between space that we're afforded now, but it's also uh, something that I think can be brought to any therapeutic work that you do. That I think traditionally therapeutic work was very focused around the identification of pathology and the isolation of or elimination of, you know, competing factors that would help lead to a diagnosis and a like a you are this. And it became, I think a lot of traditional therapies were very focused on labeling the person as a you are a this, you are a avoidant, you are a narcissist, you are a, anxiously attached, or you are, borderline, you are whatever. And I think it can be really transformative and powerful to step away from labeling yourself and this obsession with self-labeling and look more at the themes around the kind of relationships you've had and the ways that you showed up in those different relationships and how different you were in different relationships, the different sides of you that were brought up by different people, so that you transcend that label, that diagnostic label, which in and of itself limits your perception of who you are into this one box and one lens.
Mm. What would you have to say to those people who really cling on to that label? Not
Sorry,
an
now
easy
am I
question,
like,
but I know you've seen it a lot. So I'm asking, because I'm curious because I've met people in my life who really identify with their diagnosis.
love it. They love the diagnosis. They love it. It's like the crate that they crawl into at night and lock themselves in. They don't even need someone to lock them up at night. They're just like,
Sorry, that's ridiculous, but it's true.
it's so
You
true.
say it.
And I'm now just I'm in it. I feel like I'm in the SAS zone, so I have to be careful because I also recognize that this subject requires some delicacy and some sensitivity because I think people suffer a lot over identifying with labels and you know those psychodynamic diagnoses. So I think one thing they can do is just say, I was this, even if they want to still like, like let's say the label is like a little pacifier, and then they're like, and they, you don't just throw away the pacifier, you just take it out your mouth for a moment and you hold it and you say, I was this label with this person.
Hmm.
Okay, that is our match. With this person, I was this label, and that's like, look at that for a moment,
Oh,
look at
wow.
them, look at me, and then just and and honor that and see that in relationship to that other person. And then once that pacifier is out the mouth, they might also say, but with that other person, I was a whole different attachment style. I showed up in a whole different way. I didn't want to let go. I never wanted it to end. While with this one, I always had one foot out the door. And what was different between these two different relationships? And how come this person brought that side out of me and that person brought that side out of me? And then we invite those two paradoxes to enter the chat room, the proverbial chat room, and let them have a conversation.
Whoa. I'm having a mild mind blow experience right now. So I just want to put out a contemplation to our audience before we close the field. And that is if you can think about the different important relationships in your life right now, the main relationships, the ones that are really making a difference in your life, and thinking about the different roles that you play, the different hats that you wear in those relationships. Are there certain hats that you naturally feel inclined to take off that aren't working for you? Are there certain relationships that feel really good to you right now? So just kind of tuning into and honoring the hats, all the different hats that you've worn and all the different versions of yourself that you've moved through in relationship to other people, and honoring who you are now is as you are relating to those people in your life, as you're holding the space for yourself to be supported and to support those and having healthy relationships. And I want to end the space with the 639 tuning fork to support the harmonious dissolving of opposites, or how did you say it?
Yeah, reconciling paradoxes.
Reconciling paradoxes. So this is like a toast. This last tuning is a toast to reconciling paradoxes. And with that, I want to thank you, Andrew, for joining me in this conversation about relationships and relating and practicing medicine and just this weaving of different themes that have come through today. And want to thank the audience and for everyone tuning in today for joining us. And let us know if you had any insights for yourself while listening to this conversation. I will have Dr. Andrew's info in the description below. And right now, we are going to close the field.
Thank you so much for having me on.